Welcome back to District of Unity podcast. We're gonna get down and dirty with this one. The subject of this one is the black church and how it's been ruining black communities for decades. I don't have my shirt on with my name on my chest this time. I got my all black shirt on. I'm ready to rock and roll. I have a list written on this of stuff that I find wrong with the church, and I'll read off like all of them, and then I'll break down some of my thoughts on this. Relatable but not attainable, meaning that in their sermons, a lot of preachers, whether it's a black woman or a black man standing up there in the pulpit, sometimes it's both if it's a husband and wife, they'll always refer to incidents that's relatable, but they would always give you the hint that you can never overcome some of the circumstances that you're in. They preach but don't teach. They make you feel good, but they don't teach you anything about how to make your life better for the Lord. They'll teach you everything, they'll preach to you everything and build you up. It's like, kind of like we shall overcome. But overcome what? You know, there's always the message, but there's no meat to it. There's no meat on the bone. You're only getting scraps. You're not getting the true teachings because a lot of times they don't even relate some of the stuff that they preach to you from the Bible anyway. They politicize everything. That's self-explanatory. A lot of stuff comes from a political liar, and you're wondering, okay, are we here to talk about the election or are we here to better ourselves? And why is this message coming through the church and coming in this way to influence a vote instead of influencing the congregation to, better themselves overall for the Lord? They endorse bling, but not the thing. Meaning that they'll sit over there, they'll come out there looking like a hip hop artist, they'll come out there looking like a circus clown in some cases. They'll do everything they can to highlight them and not highlight a message that they're trying to present to you. You lose all thought of what the message is when they're getting out of a Rolls Royce, they're getting out of a, whatever, Lamborghini. I mean, is it about you? Is it about the jet plane that you're flying? I didn't realize every, black preacher was Ric Flair all of a sudden. So it's like, what message are you really portraying to them? Are you portraying your own prosperity? Because a lot of your congregation don't have what you have, and they probably won't get what you have, but yet you're preaching all of this to them about prosperity, and it's not really something that they can attain because you're not teaching them anything how to get there, except through subversive ways, not building up men and building up women to be able to handle success. Race baiting, again, self-explanatory. Why every time there's some white man that's going to take something from you when you have success? Why is there always some white woman that's predatorily coming after, if that's a word, coming after a black man when he's successful? Why are you so worried about that? If we were all created in God's image, we all were created in God's image. So race shouldn't even be a part of it. Hell, you probably are laid up next to somebody that's not your race right now watching this video. So why is that important? Why should you care? And like I said in one of my other videos, who you love is who you love. And if they love you back, that's between both of y'all. It has nothing to do with anything else. And stop making enemies when enemies aren't there. You know, You got to love everybody equally, and you got to give everybody equal chances, and stop making it a group thing when it's an individual thing. You know, I know just as many black, you know, racist as you can put white classist. You know, that's a whole nother video. I've seen more white people class you out of something versus being racist. They they legitimately are not. A lot of them are not racist. They have a class mentality. I went to Harvard, you didn't. Why are you here? That type of thing. Whereas blacks would be like, you're white, you're the enemy, you got more than I have, you have more opportunities than I have. The hell with you. You see what I'm saying? Those are two different things. Classism is, about where you come out of. What groups are you with? Both are wrong. don't get me don't get me wrong with it. I'm not defending them. I'm just giving you an idea of how racism actually works. Racism, obviously, if you look a certain way, you are a certain way, you're trash. That's racism, you know. So anyway, um, endorses politics, You're not going to church to vote. You're going to church to get closer with the Lord and become better people, you know. Depending on your denomination, it could be God the Father, Jesus the Son, the Word, man, woman, children, however you arrange that, depending on your denomination and so forth, you know. Some go this way, some go that way. But you're there to learn about, getting closer to your God as opposed to getting closer to red and blue. And that's a huge problem in black churches. Then you have social activism instead of fellowship. Again, to make better people, it's not about going there indoctrinating somebody for a cause. It's about fellowship, getting closer to your fellow man, your fellow woman, and learning how to be better people and serve your community better, and to have an enlightened state of mind where you understand you taking care of each other, you taking care of this planet, you taking care of everybody around you, and you try to, encourage the mind to be better, not taking the social activism stance where it's like, oh, we need to protest down the street because of this. We need to protest such and such. It, that's a community center type of thing. That's not even part of a church. The church is supposed to be above politics and social causes. They tried to hone you to be better people, or, you know, I'll leave the other part alone because I'm not trying to get blocked again. Sacrifice for a cause instead of building better people. I just went through all of that because, we'll go all out for a cause, but we won't stay with trying to make people better in the long term. Show but don't grow. Obviously, if your pastor, your minister is pulling up in a Rolls Royce, Lamborghini, whatever, have all sorts of bling, looking like the rapper, the circus clown, whatever. And you're supposed to learn how to be that instead of trying to be a better person. Is it about them or is it about the message? And ministers fight with that all the time. They always try to come off and say, hey, I'm showing off for the Lord. Are you really? Are you buying that? I'm not. And I never have. A lot of black churches emasculate men. They make men secondary. They don't teach them to be leaders. They don't teach them to be strong. They teach them to be weak and teach them to be victims. And again, I'll put a preamble on all of this and a preface to all of this. Not all black churches do this, but a lot of the ones that I've gone to over the years, they do. They take a lot of these points that I'm making. They always have you play the victim and stay the victim. You know, if you were beat up by the cops, shot by the police, you were in some sort of gang, you grew up wrong. Look, I grew up in DC, and I grew up in a time where when I went to school, I wasn't supposed to make it to 18. And all of you that grew up with me that's watching the video, you can attest to them saying, you be lucky not to be locked up by 18, dead by 21. You're not going to do this. The white man is going to take it from you. You heard all of that crap through the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And I know you've heard it because that's all the schools was talking about. And that's all that people talked to us about. It was very little support as in terms of, you making yourself into something better than what you was. And if you did, you were a sellout. You were the one that was wrong. Oh, you leaving us behind. Oh, you not taking us with you. You see what I'm saying? Well, how could you do that? I can't do what you do. They guilt trip you into being what they are. You know, it's basically a slavish mentality. And some people, would say, yeah, it goes back to slavery, blah, blah, blah. Get off of it. You know what I'm saying? It's 2023 as of times of this video. And a lot of what Malcolm X said, and a lot of what Martin Luther King and some other civil rights leaders at that time said still applies to this day. I can watch, the Ballad or the Bullet from Malcolm X, and 90% of what he said in that video applies to today. Look it up yourself. I mean, and you tell me what's different. Change the names out of it. You got the same situation, and I partially blame, if not halfway, blame the black church for it because they constantly have you play the victim over and over again, and it doesn't make any sense. That's why I moved out of the black community. That's why I just couldn't stay there. It's the mentality I got tired of. You know, you have some black elites that go there, but they preach the same message and live a whole nother lifestyle. You know, they're the MSNBCers, they're the CNNers, and all of that. And then you got some black elites that watch Fox, and they still have that same mentality. So, I could do a whole nother video on, the mass media. And matter of fact, I will. But they have that same mentality. Like, you're always the victim no matter how well you do in life. And no matter what you do in life. And this is coming from the church. This is not coming from a politician or, just a regular community activist. I mean, it's coming out of the church. And they're, teaching you to be a victim. So, the bully pulpit. And I just highlighted it. If you walk down the aisle with, Roberta instead of, instead of well, let me put it this way. If you have a Becky instead of a Brenda or whatever black name you can think of, and none of the names are really, tied to races or whatever, but I'm just using this for an example. You're a sellout. That's what they would tell you. I've dated outside of my race quite often, probably dated more outside my race than in it. And a lot of it has to do with I'm not trying to fight for testosterone all the time. I want a woman that's feminine. I don't want a woman that's sitting over there, you know, that she's ready to go do MMA every time. You know what I'm saying? I'm not trying to fight for testosterone. I'm sorry. I mean, it's like if I want to fight for testosterone, I want to put on gloves, go to the gym, or go outside and beat somebody up, even though that ain't happening nowadays. They'll up and shoot you. You know what I'm saying? And it's like you want to take the aggression out of relationships. And what about love? What about having, you know, a partner that you don't have to always go against? And I'm not saying that all sisters are that way, but a lot of them are. I'm sorry, at least with me. And, you know, that's a whole nother subject that I'm going to have to do another video on, apparently. Indoctrination instead of congregation. When you are in a black church, you always feel like you're being called for a social activist event instead of trying to learn the Bible and trying to learn how to be a better person to your fellow man, your fellow woman, and so forth. And, you know, they don't always use scripture. They use allegory. They always going outside of something to get you to do something else, and that's not right. And blacks, unfortunately, by nature, are very forgiving and very, you know, inclusive to a fault. You know, we always look at the group and not the individual. So we need to get off of this groupthink thing and start looking at people as people. You know, just because you had a problem with one white person doesn't mean you're going to have that same problem with another white person. Just because you had a problem with this Asian person doesn't mean the next one is going to be that way. You can insert any race, background, creed, or whatever. Just because you had a problem with one doesn't mean you're going to have a problem with all. It's that person, not that group, you know, and start thinking that way, and you'll be a much better person for it, and the church will be a much better church for it. They create followers, not leaders. Again, they're not raising men, they're raising followers. They're not raising women, they're raising followers. If you want leaders, you have to teach people how to elevate their game, elevate, you know, the way they look at the world. When you don't elevate somebody, they're going to repeat the same thing over and over again, which is why a lot of these communities stay the way that they are, because they are learning to follow, not learning to lead. And people gonna hate me because of these comments, but it's true. Think about, you know, your family. Go 4 generations back. Are they always in poverty? Are they always in trouble with the law? Are they always on the system? There's a reason for that. It's not always because the white man is holding you down. You holding yourself down with your lack of values or your lack of control and so forth. And where is it coming from? It's probably that church you're going to, you know. And trust me, they're part of the problem, but not the whole problem. And it's not every black church. And I'm saying that to remind you before you guys comment on this. So, barriers to success. Again, define success. You can't, because they don't tell you what success is. This that goes back to creative followers, not leaders. You establish a business in a black neighborhood, you are now that one that got to loan everybody money, you gotta do everything for everybody. It is not. We defeat ourselves, and then when that person gets pissed off and goes to another community that's more affluent, they sold out and left everybody behind instead of you stepping up to their level. You know, you force them to come down to yours, and then you wonder why you can't get anywhere. And then the church is always telling you that you're a victim. and you always will be a victim. You see how all of these things go back and apply to everything in your life? When you go to work, when you have interpersonal relationships, when you have family, it all ties back. You're hearing the same message everywhere. And you watch TV, you get them beat up by that television because they don't want you to succeed. And they is a relative term. There are different theys that's out there. And they're not all white. It's a message. It's a hidden message out there. You know, you can say it's the devil, you can say it's whoever. But a lot of people need impoverished people in order to have successful businesses, success in politics, and other areas. They don't want you to succeed. They don't want you to be healthy. They don't want you to be smart. You know, there's a lot of bigger fish out there. You can say corporations, you can say governments, whatever. There's a reason why they want areas to be impoverished and why blacks are always being used as pawns. The independent, strong woman. This is probably the biggest, you know, deficit in the black community because they always preach for the woman to be strong and stronger than a lot of black men that's around them. And they get beat up to the point where it's like growing up, your mother always telling you what you're not instead of what you are. You're always being told what you can't do versus what you can do. It's always the negativity that goes on and on. And it comes out of the black church too. You know, you get tired of being told what you can't do and what you can't say versus what you can do and what you can say, and how that builds your rapport and builds your mind up to be successful. All of this ties back together. The love of the church and not the Lord. When you go to that church, it's not about that church. It's about, you know, serving God, serving the Lord. Whatever denomination you are, I don't care if you're Jewish, I don't care if you're Muslim, I don't care, you know, if you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever. You know, go down the list. If it's about that church and not about what's being taught to make you a better person and bring you closer to God, you might want to leave that church. Twisted scriptures. And that's the last point I'm going to make on this. They'll turn any scripture into either race baiting, victimization, you have to sacrifice this because of this. There's always a negative and a positive to everything. I mean, you can look at the Bill of Rights, for example. You know, you can have the right to free speech. There's an anti-right in there too. An anti-right meaning you had the right not to listen to that speech. You had the right to bear arms. You had the right not to bear arms. You see what I'm getting at? So you can turn any positive message into a negative outcome. Just like you could turn a negative scripture into a positive outcome. And when you're doing that, you're controlling somebody's mind. And when you let them control your mind, they got you and they're using you like a joystick, like they playing a video game with you. I'm gonna make Carl do this, and he's going to do it because he's afraid to go through that door of success there. Because we said once you get there, that old white man gonna get you, boy. You know, it's like no matter what you do, oh, you might not want to drive that car over here because the police are going to pull you over. And you might not make it home. That's a whole nother video. I know that's a sensitive subject, but that's the kind of mentality you're getting out of the church. And, you know, I'm sure there's going to be a part 2, a part 3, a part 4 to this. But I had to say, you know, part of the problems that I have with black churches over the years. Again, it's not all of them, and it's not in every neighborhood, but it's a lot of them. You know, that's all I got for now. You know, like or dislike, I don't care. That's just how I feel about it. Until the next video.